Welcome back to all of our Real Estate Roundtable members. We promised to show up in force for one of our own this evening, and it's a real privilege to welcome back to the Real Estate Roundtable our friend Penny Pritzker. As all of you know, Penny is an entrepreneur, a civic leader, a philanthropist, and a former cabinet official. She has shaped and grown a number of businesses in multiple industries, from real estate to technology to healthcare and senior living, venture capital, and even off airport parking. And she is also the founder and chairman of the global private investment firm PSP Partners, which invests in real estate, advanced industrials, and business services. And moving well beyond the world of real estate, Penny serves on the board of Microsoft and is the chair of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. She was, as you recall, a core member of President Obama's economic team. Penny was honored to serve as the 38th U.S. Secretary of Commerce from 2013 to 2018, leading the country's trade and investment promotion efforts. Prior to that, President Obama appointed Penny to serve on his Council for Jobs and Competitiveness. And in that role, she advised on economic growth and job creation to bring our country out of the 08-09 financial crisis. And of course, here we are again. And on that front, Penny's past is also prologue. The Biden-Harris transition team has tapped Penny's leadership and experience. She has been heavily involved for more than a year in shaping the Biden administration's plan to build back better from the COVID-19 pandemic. We could not have a better, more wonderful guest to talk about this moment, where we are in this country, and the profound challenges and opportunities that our nation, our businesses, our industry, and our leaders face. So, Madam Secretary, I love calling you that. We're thrilled to have you back at the roundtable. Thank you.
Well, Madam Chairman, thanks for having me. Debra, it's great to be here, and it's great to be with so many old friends. So thanks for inviting me to join you this evening.
So we really wanted to start with your perspective on leadership, and you've experienced that and inspired others to action in corporations and philanthropy and government. And I'd love to get your thoughts on the notion of leadership and the notion of trust, which has been sorely eroded over the past 4 years, and it was starting even before that. So can you speak about where you see us as a country in terms of trust and what our leaders need to do?
Well, let me start with the inauguration. You know, Joe Biden made unity and truth kind of a central themes of his inauguration. And I think, as I like to say, and I've said to you, Debra, I think the first thing is decency, competency, empathy, truth, they're back and in our leaders. And I think that that's essential. The American people need that, and especially as we deal with the crises that we're dealing with. And I feel really positive that President Biden basically came out and said, look, we've got a lot of work to do, and it's hard work. And I think that for us as a country to come together, we first have to really believe what's the problem. And we all know we have a COVID crisis. Thank God science has prevailed, and we've developed vaccines, and they're coming to us as quickly as possible. And I have a lot of confidence in the team that's doing that. But, just hearing the President of the United States say, with COVID, things are going to get worse before they get better, and be careful and take care of yourself. That's important messaging. To hear Ron Klain, the chief of staff, say, on Meet the Press this past weekend, we're going to take responsibility for government. We're going to own the problem. We're going to work with the states. We're going to be direct with our communications. that's the kind of leadership that everybody on this call has to just, exhibit every single day, which is you can't get away with obfuscation and diversion. Your stakeholders know what's going on. So to me, I think that, all of us know that for us to lead effectively, we've got to do it with integrity and authenticity. And I think that's, back for us as a country. And I think that, we as business leaders, we look for leaders who are solutions oriented, who we don't want all this bickering. Quit bickering. We've got problems, solve the problems for the common good. Deal with this COVID-19 challenge. Tell us what we have to do, and they have, executive order, wear a mask, no kidding. You heard from Scott Gottlieb, who says, don't just wear a mask, wear your N95 and be careful. Things are worse before they're going to get better. And I think we also want stability and certainty and competency and reliability in what we're being told. So I think that's the kind of leadership that's important for the country. It's kind of fundamental. It's how you lead, and so to me, I think that's really important.
And interestingly, I mean, President Biden has kind of been running for president since the late 80s. Now he's in his late 70s, and in some ways maybe the man for the moment because of the characteristics that you described. What do you think do you agree he's the right person for this moment of what the country needs? And what do you think the big challenge is? Obviously COVID, but what is this administration facing as you came in when you started with President Obama? What is this administration uniquely facing? And then what do all administrations face as they come in?
Well, I think that, first of all, is Joe Biden the man for the moment? The answer is yes, because we've elected him. And yes, because I think he brings a set of skills he's authentically interested in working with people. And my own personal experience was he sort of put his arm around me and said, I'm going to help you understand how this place works. You have ideas that are different than what my experience is, but you have no idea how to get things done. And I'm going to help you do that. He's a decent human being and people like him. And I think that they're being very disciplined about the 4 things that are the priorities. And you heard it in the inauguration, you've been reading it in the press, you see it in the executive orders. The 4 things. First, deal with the crisis.
Yes.
Second, deal with the economic challenges that we're facing and get people back in jobs, which means you got to have the COVID, you've got to get that under control. Third is dealing with racial inequity and unequal opportunity. We cannot continue the way we have been going. We've got to deal with that. And that's where I think there's a big opportunity for the business community. And then fourth is the climate crisis. And really coming to terms with the fact we have a role as the United States of America domestically and globally to play in the climate actions. And it's an economic opportunity. It's not just a do-good thing. It's necessary. Your customers, my customers, they're all telling us, I'm not interested in your product if it's not sustainable. I don't want to know about what you're doing if you're, not sensitive to carbon emissions. So those are the 4 priorities. That's enough to try and get done. That's hard.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And so that's the agenda. And frankly, then you've got to deal with the rest of the issues that show up on your desk that will happen either domestically or around the world. So I think one of the things we should be optimistic about is the folks that he's put in place, in my mind, are experienced. So
Yes.
why is Joe Biden a man for the moment also, besides his own integrity and his own personality and his own experience and his own relationships? It's because he's also committed to putting good talent around him. All of us as leaders know, and the government is no different, you're only as good as the team around you. And so these are talented people who have a lot of experience. And will they make mistakes? For sure. All of us make mistakes. But are these experienced, capable, knowledgeable people who can also bring order back to our government? I think that's the other thing we have to remember. Morale, I served on the transition team. I think there were 10 or 12 different parts of the government that were under the work that I was doing. And the morale challenges are as important to be addressed as anything. We have in our federal government, that's the thing I experienced, we have great talent. And I had Nobel Prize winners working in the Department of Commerce. There's great talent there. But just like your workforce or my workforce, they want to be taken care of. They want to be led. They want to know that they're dealing with the truth.
Yes.
This is important.
Well, I think we're all invested in the idea that government has to start working again. And I do hear from business people who have gone into government over the years who are really surprised at the talent that is working and serving in these roles. And it sounds like that was your experience as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We take for granted the services that the federal government provides until they fail us, right? So if you think about the Weather Service, right, which I know intimately because it was part of the Department of Commerce, we get our weather from all these different apps or whatever. The bottom line is most of the science and the effort comes from the federal government. The same is true about climate data and climate science. It comes from the weather. It comes from NOAA. The same is true with standards. I mean, these are things we take for granted that are essential. You want biotechnology to work, you need standards.
Exactly.
So to me, those are just two examples. So we, in addition to our military, we need our federal government and the fundamental services that they provide, and we need it to work. And that's why we need solid leadership in place.
Right. And what we've seen over the last 4 years and for a period of time before that is, the government isn't working. And for whatever reason, people lose trust in the government. But one of the interesting things is that business has really filled that void. I don't remember a time period where CEOs and companies were more trusted and were taking more visible roles in some of the key issues of the day. And is that something that you think will continue as we move forward? I mean, business has played an incredibly constructive role on issues from racial injustice to the certifying of the election and everything in between. So do you see that continuing even if we do get the government to work again for the American people?
Absolutely. We're not just a top-down or country, and our business leaders, look, this does not surprise me. And I made this case constantly when I was there. My experience of CEOs for the most part, and there's always an exception somewhere, are patriots. They love this country. They want this country to be better. Yes, they want to sell their goods and services domestically and abroad, but they desperately want us to tackle the challenges in our society. And they're job creators. And there is no greater benefit you can give to an individual than a job, a good job. And so, and business leaders know how to get things done.
Yes.
And to me, what you're pointing out, Debra, is frankly, business leaders have been leading. They've been leading on training. They've been leading on climate. They've been leading on economic opportunity, apprenticeships, et cetera. So many different areas. And I think it's that's not going to stop. That shouldn't stop. What should happen is we need the government and business to partner together, and we need to make it easier for that to happen. And we have to facilitate that so that it's not so hard to work together.
Right. I mean, it would be very powerful if both were hitting on all cylinders and working together. Agreed.
Honestly, if we're going to stay competitive globally, we have to figure this out. We don't have a choice.
Right. Other countries obviously have both working together in a more holistic way, clearly. Well, let's talk about the economy. We're in a bit of an economic crisis. We have these multiple existential crises, upon us. And last time, when you came in as part of the Jobs and Competitiveness Council, we were coming out of the 08-09 financial crisis. And this one is a little bit different. I mean, Jeff likes to say it's one of the first ones that the real estate industry hasn't caused. And so, we're facing the pandemic and all the economic downturn that has come with that. So how do you think the policies that we need to adopt now are different than those that were required 10 plus years ago?
Yeah, I think this is different. I think back then we had a financial crisis. Today we have a health crisis that's causing an economic crisis. I mean, we were at full employment before the pandemic. In fact, we were such full employment, it was almost its own challenge, if you will. And then on top of it, you have our crisis of racial inequity and opportunity, and then you have a climate crisis. So, this is more like, I think, Teddy Roosevelt's time than it is more like 2008. And certainly the markets have behaved a little differently than 2008. Look, I think that the first thing that has to happen is we need to get the American Rescue Plan voted on, which is, the next round of stimulus, which is extremely important. And it's particularly important because it has provisions to help, get COVID relief and vaccines to everyone, testing, PPE, all the things that we know work that we need to have happen. Second is we need more relief in that bill. There's more relief for families and individuals who are in trouble, and small businesses that are hanging on by their, fingernails. And so that's really important. And frankly, it's important that there's state and local support for our teachers. Our teachers, our firemen, our police men and women, they're our first responders. So we need to get that thing done and not mess around with that. I think the next opportunity, really, from a policy standpoint, is around infrastructure and immigration. And I think infrastructure might be easier than immigration. You've seen that the Biden administration proposed an immigration bill, which I think we need that. There's talent we need. We need to make it easier for people. And we need a path for the people who are here, illegally to become citizens. We need to fix that. We need to be tougher on the border. But in addition, we need an infrastructure and we need investment in competitiveness and innovation. And if you look at the polling, it shows the American people really recognize that we're falling behind in innovation and competitiveness. And so that would be the second fundamental legislation. If you could get, the stimulus and that bill done and something around immigration, that's hugely successful for Congress. And that's a lot to get done in the next 24 months. Particularly, as we all know, there'll be midterm elections, and that always throws a monkey wrench into the best laid plans, if you will. But I think that, if in the stimulus bill, if you think about it, as I said, there's direct payments to Americans, there's funding to open schools, there's funding for vaccines and health infrastructure, there's state and local funding, and there's expanding leave. That's one thing I think we all need to think about. One of the challenges that's come from this COVID crisis is women are losing their jobs faster than men. And and that's really because there's home trying to take care of the family. And so this paid leave, it's an opportunity to finally address that. And to me, I think that's what any, modern society needs to do. And then there's funding for families.
One of the things we heard today about the American Rescue Plan is maybe there's too much in it that's non-COVID related. Where do you think the administration will go? I think Biden has indicated his willingness to talk about it. Where do you think the must-haves and the need-to-haves are within that ARP?
Well, look, as you've noticed, no one in the administration is going to negotiate in public. But I think that there's we know what the hot buttons are, right?
Yes.
Minimum wage is a hot button. There's how much support to the states and municipalities. Those are hot buttons. But they're important. Why is minimum wage important? Minimum wage is important because we are a consumer society. And if we're not paying people a living wage, then how do we expect? I mean, this is America. This is the United States of America. And I'll just tell you something about $15, which is a sort of an interesting thing. We in Chicago work with, there are about 2,500, they're men who are violent. These are the people who shoot or get shot. And they basically, when you talk to them, they tell you, if for $15 an hour, I'm off the street. You can take my gun. I just need to make that amount. I mean, this is something we need to understand, the knock-on effect of not paying people a wage they can support their family. And we should continue to do things like tax credits for low income and the earned income tax credit, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a fundamental pay level thing that needs to be dealt with, so we'll see what happens. I'm convinced that this is such a priority, and there is bipartisan support for it. They'll get it done. What gets traded, I don't know specifically.
And do you think something will get done in the near term on the American Rescue Plan for COVID?
I think it needs to look, what are we learning right now? And I'm sure Scott Gottlieb talked about it. I read some of what he talked about, but we have a supply problem of vaccines. We don't really have a delivery problem. The states and localities are ramping up very fast. And the fact it's distributed is really helpful, because that means the vaccine should go for the most part to the people who most need it. We have a supply problem. We need money to buy those vaccines. The federal government wants to buy, you saw it today. They want to buy and get us all vaccinated by the summer. That would be awesome. Yes. Think about the impact on real estate if we're all vaccinated. As my brother's governor of Illinois, he says to me, "You think I don't want people to go to a bar and a restaurant? I want them in bars and restaurants." It's a great part of joy in people's life. It's the livelihood for many people. He says, "I want this stuff open." He says, "I just don't want people dying when they go to a bar and restaurant."
Exactly. So on the longer term, the infrastructure, immigration, investment in R&D, when do you see that coming to fruition? And agreed, I think real estate, some of these issues are where we can be on our front foot. And maybe you can talk about that, how we can be a part of, supporting some of these initiatives that are good for job creation, good for the economy, and also good for, your friends and the members of the real estate industry.
Look, I think that the real estate industry has a real stake in an infrastructure bill. And from what I understand, there's significant bipartisan support for an infrastructure bill. What is 21st century infrastructure? It's not just bridges and roads. It's also our entire digital backbone. Right. It's broadband, but it's more than that. Think about the solar winds hack. Think about what just happened. The Russians basically didn't just attack the government, they attacked our companies too. That's extreme. We need to address infrastructure, digital as well as physical. In addition, there's enormous support, and the American people, and you check the polling, will tell you we're not investing enough in our competitiveness. So what does that mean? That's R&D, but it's also investing in our people. And this is where the real estate industry has a lot to say. Investing in our people, so that they have the skills and capabilities, whether they're employed by you or employed by someone else, but they're employable at a living wage. That's important. And we as a country need to be doing that, and we're not doing it. And we need, and I'll just talk a little bit about, let's call it AI or 5G or quantum or batteries, electric vehicle batteries or other things. We need to win those technologies. That is a competitiveness issue, not just domestically, but for our global capabilities. And China is basically taking advantage of the fact we don't have our act together.
Right.
On this front. We've left it to, it's too distributed. We need to double down on certain technologies that are vital to our competitiveness and our national security. And the thing I'm optimistic about is the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, he gets it. He gets that economic strength and competitiveness are tied to national security. Yes. We need to support that. We need, as an industry, to basically say, hey, this is smart. This is, this is important for the future of our country. And I still talk to business leaders all over, and their attitude is, this is essential. We need to do this.
But does that require, training low-skilled workers? Does it require a change in our education system? Does it require changing the visa requirements for, brainiacs who want to come to the United States? Is it all of the above and then some? How do you see that competitiveness issue domestically for AI and digital and all these areas?
It's all of the above. There isn't a business leader in this country that isn't trying to have a more diverse workforce in their technology. We're all desperate for it. We need to make sure that the pipeline of talent is diverse. We need to embrace that as a country.
Yes.
And that means, and to be honest, think about it. The reason I use the Teddy Roosevelt analogy, first of all, my friend Rahm Emanuel, who's who reads and studies history, he and I were talking about this, and it rings true to me. But that's when we adopted, requirement you have to go to high school. I think we have to really think about what does it mean for an individual, a young person in this country, to be competitive over the 50 or 60 years of their lifetime. But then, with all due respect to those of us who are in our careers, 30, 40, 50, 60, we have to keep upping our game too. As another friend of mine, Richard Haas, said, it used to be you went to school, you got your education, your gas tank was filled, and you drove around your life on that tank of gas. Right. You have to refill that tank of gas now. The technology is moving too quickly. The opportunities are there if we can do it. But it means a massive change of thinking, in my opinion.
Well, that's important for the U.S. economically to retain its position as the global world power. When we think about it internationally, you were very involved as a Commerce Secretary, trying to ensure fair and reciprocal trade and promoting foreign investment in U.S. businesses and products and workers. And you, while you were there, really were identified with the TPP, which would have created a zone of economic activity between the U.S. and the non-Chinese Asian countries. And when you were with us last, we talked about what a boon that could be for the United States. In the last couple of years, we tore up that treaty. And China, I think, has effectively exploited and moved into the void and now has created a trading zone with those countries. without us. So how do you see us on the global stage really re-energizing global economic activity through fair and free trade now that we have lost ground in Europe, we've lost ground with the Asian economies?
Well, I think that your description of the situation is accurate, and I think there's a number of things that we need to do. As it relates to China, the political environment in the U.S. is going to remain negative and adversarial towards China. Kind of competition is now baked into our relationship with China. So, and Tony Blinken, who's our new I think he's been confirmed or hopefully going to be confirmed soon. He said, that President Trump was right to take a tougher approach on China. The challenge is the way we did it, it backfired. We're worse off than we were. I'm not going to give the litany here. But I think there's two ways to take on China. And then I'm going to talk about Europe. The first is what I just talked about, an economic competitiveness plan. We have to be up to the task. I mean, I will tell you, we created a competitiveness plan at the Department of Commerce when I was there. And frankly, the Chinese took it and they basically, have that's part of China and make it in 2025, which is, I think, a really, we've got to adopt that ourselves. I think that, and that's part of the legislation we were talking about, the infrastructure and competitiveness legislation. I think the second is multilateral alliances, and this goes to our relationship with Europe. We need to re-strengthen our relationship with Europe. And that's going to mean both on the economic side, on the privacy issues, and other technology issues, and then third, on NATO. I think we have to really, figure out our path with NATO, and that's beyond my scope of expertise. We have to re-enter the Paris Climate Accords, which we're doing, and the World Health Organization and the WTO. We need reform at the WTO. There's a huge opportunity. There's a wonderful woman who I hope, Ngozi, who becomes the head of the WTO. That's the beginning of figuring out what do we do in terms of more global trade opportunities. And that's another place where I think the Real Estate Roundtable has a voice and a stake. Look, we house the US economy. That's what we do in real estate. And so, the moving of goods and supplies and services is absolutely our business because it's what we then house. So to me, I think there's this multilateralism and particularly strengthening our relationship with Europe and Japan is really, really critical to our future. Whether there are specific trade agreements that happen in the near term, I think the plate is pretty full with the agenda I discussed. I don't know. Basically, I think that the spokesperson, Janet Yellen has said, that we're not going to be signing any free trade agreements in the near term. I think the focus is on getting the pandemic and the economic situation under control, and to attack the void that we left globally through multilateralism.
Well, we started off talking about trust and leadership, and I guess I wonder whether what we need to do to gain back the trust, because sometimes when your partners find out that you're not there and they find out that they can get along very well without you, it's not as easy as just saying, hey, we're back and everything goes back to the status quo ante. So what do you think we need to do to rebuild the trust that these multilateral partners or NGOs have in the United States to make us effective in these important areas?
So this is going to sound really fundamental. We have to show up. And a number of my friends who are leaders of countries around the world said, you've been off the playing field. And that means you're not just showing up at the G7 or the G20. It means really and that means we have to fill the positions in government with people who are empowered, who are approved and Senate approved, so that they can go, and when they speak one of the great benefits I had as Secretary of Commerce was people knew that I had the backing of the President of the United States, that I was, I didn't go out there and just say stuff and people had no idea, if it was you're speaking for the country. We need to do that, not just at the secretarial level, which obviously the Secretary of State will do and the Secretary of Treasury will do and the Secretary of Defense will do, but there's all of this sub-cabinet level work that goes on that, frankly, I have to confess as a business person, I was really not that attuned to, that is essential for us to fill the void, if you will, and rebuild trust. And that's why, to me, it's so important that the people in the jobs, they're not ideological, they're really competent. And that's really important and the people that they go out and really fundamentally represent the United States of America, on message, if you will.
Right, on a consistent basis.
Absolutely.
At all levels, yes.
Debra, I'll just say one thing. One of the great, and this is just silly, but one observation you have when you're in government is it's like business. It's an ultimately human endeavor, right? It's about people. It's about dialogue. They call them dialogues for a reason. It's about engaging. And so we have to do that, and we have to demonstrate that we're reliable. And that's why it's important that there's unity and that there's, we figure out a way to get stuff done in a unified fashion.
Well, you mentioned, coming in as Commerce Secretary, and people knew that you spoke for the president. Now we're hopefully going to have a Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, who's a friend of both of ours, and we brought to the roundtable not too long ago. What advice would you give her as she enters this role? The scope of the Commerce Department is much broader, I think, than anyone realizes, including, as you mentioned, weather, fisheries, business internationally, among other things. So what advice would you give to her as if she comes in this environment to run that department?
I think there's two pieces of advice I would have. First of all, her number one job is she is the liaison to the business community. She has 12 agencies under her that she will be running. She has to get good people involved in running each one of them. She can't run those, agencies in the department, and she needs a strong deputy, and she's got one in Don Graves. He's terrific. He's experienced. He's up to the job. And the piece of advice I did give her is surround yourself with people who understand how Washington works, because you're not of Washington, which is good.
Yeah,
you can do that. The second thing is she owns the competitiveness agenda, and so she's our liaison to get that done. And the third thing I would say is probably, an important part of her job also is, in the very short run, is get the census thing figured out. There's been so much politicization of the census. It's really important because it decides how money gets distributed. It's important for redistricting. Get it figured out in a way that people have confidence in it. And so that'll probably be, top of mind. And then on the climate side, she has a stake in the oceans with NOAA.
Yes. I forgot about the census, that Commerce is in charge of that as well. So it is an incredible portfolio, and one that you manage so beautifully. And we are so grateful to you both for your service as Commerce Secretary and for being here today. I do know that people are giving questions from the audience, Penny. So if you have a minute or two, I'd ask Jeff to come on and maybe ask a few of the questions from our members.
I'd be delighted to do that. I'm just
Thank you.
Have a little iced tea while I'm waiting.
Okay.
Penny, can you hear me?
I can, Jeff.
I don't know what's going on here with my camera, but it's not.
You're on.
You as well, Jeff. There you are.
Hi. So we had several questions relating to international trade, the TPP, which you were involved in negotiating, and sort of discuss its relationship with national security. You know, the Defense Department is for it, citing it as something with national security and trade people and so forth. Will you talk a little bit about that for a minute?
Sure. I mean, I still think that the United States needs to figure out a way to engage in the trade consortiums, if you will. I think it's important. I think the challenge is really one around labor and environment. Those are the sticking points, right? Rule of law, making sure the countries that you're trading with have a similar rule of law, or one that where you have a remedy, if you will, if they're not upholding the rule of law. The second is really around labor and making sure that there are labor standards. And the third's around environmental protections. We don't have credibility on environmental standards if we're not part of Paris. So step one is to become, legitimately again part of the climate engagement, and to begin to really, frankly, I don't know about all of you, our kids, our customers, our employees, they want us to be responsible with this thing we call with the place we live called Earth. And so, we need to address those things. Those are precursors to us considering, or being able to negotiate and get past trade agreements.
Penny, the other thing I've many times you've mentioned early stage R&D investment. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So why should the federal government put more money into that? It's because if you really think about the challenge in innovation, is you're a scientist in let's call it a federal laboratory or a university laboratory, or you're a discoverer and you create something. But for it to get to the commercialization where it can become a product or a service or whatever, they call it the valley of death, which is there's not commercial funding to take the risk from I'm gonna call it the laboratory to the commercialization. And that's where, for example, the monies that is spent by the Department of Energy or the Department of Defense are so important to the United States' innovation. If you think about so many of the benefits that we have today come from that early money spent, and it's so essential. We have been cutting that funding year after year, not just as in whole dollars, but also as a percentage of GDP, and to the point where, frankly, our competitiveness is at risk. And what's fascinating to me, I keep coming back to this, the polling, when you go out and talk to American, it doesn't matter what party they are, they come back and say, we have to do more to stay competitive.
Penny, this might not be in your bailiwick, but I'm sure that you've got a very informed opinion on it. And that concerns public-private partnerships and really the infrastructure thing that you just mentioned. How can that be more of a part of moving forward? Because obviously there's so much capital in the world that wants to invest in infrastructure, but yet it's kind of difficult. Although the Obama administration, when you were there over at transportation, they did have a Department of Public-Private Partnerships and stuff, but it kind of went away. Do you see that as coming back and as more of a part of President Biden's initiative here?
I don't know, Jeff. I haven't really focused in that area, but I do think it's essential. If you think about the amount of capital that we need to invest in our country and our infrastructure, that capital is available. It's sitting on the sidelines because it's sometimes too hard to put to work. And we need to figure that out. One of the biggest impediments was regulatory approvals for projects. Often those were, the layers of regulatory approval. And often it wasn't necessarily the federal government, it was the state, and then the local, and then the environmental, and then the, you go on. And figuring out how to streamline that was one of the things that we worked on. Now, where it is today, I don't know. I just have not kept track of that.
Yeah. And this one just popped up. What is Ms. Pritzker's favorite? What was your favorite part of your job as secretary, and what was your least favorite part of your job as secretary?
Oh, you know what? It was an honor to do that job and to serve. And I would say, I'm going to answer the question a little bit differently. I mean, to represent the United States and to go out and to try and make it possible for more business to be done, for American companies around the world was an extraordinary privilege, to try and do that and to be the representative of American business, in the government and then externally to other countries. But that required partnership with often the private sector in other countries. And I loved that kind of bringing that together, that, if you will, deal making, if you will. I thought that was amazing. I don't know if it was my favorite part, but it was something I really I enjoyed. I think that appropriation hearings are not always the most fun thing to do. You get grilled about every detail of the budget for your department. And I would say that was challenging, but essential because, look, we're a democracy. You're spending the people's money. And there should be layers of approval. It should not be just like a corporation where you kind of, can streamline. Yeah. You need to have checks and balances. And we've seen how important checks and balances are in our government. But I would say that was one of the more challenging things I had to do. I had to build relationships across the aisle to get things done. And that was, for me, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed trying to understand what was motivating someone.
Okay, well, I have one more that's come in, and then I have one of my own. The one that's just come in is, when are you going back in the government? We need you. Thank
you very much. Not now. But as I said, it was an honor, and hopefully at some point in the future I get that privilege again.
And my question is really, what do you think we could do? We think of ourselves as community minded, jobs minded, supportive, positive. How can we, with Deb's leadership and John's leadership and the board, and our people, what can we do to be more helpful and be viewed as contributing and helping find a solution here?
I think there's a number of things, Jeff. I think first of all, as it relates to legislation, we talked about the infrastructure/innovation legislation. You can weigh in, and don't kid yourself, though. You're showing up and you're making your voice heard matters a lot on Capitol Hill, and particularly with such a divided Congress and the real estate industry having a spectrum of individuals. I think that's extremely important. I also think it's important locally in our communities and in our businesses that we're seen as really trying to create opportunity, equal opportunity in our communities and in our businesses, and that our companies look like our communities. And that, that puts an onus on us as leaders to probably go the extra mile to make that happen, whether it's around apprenticeships or it's around training, and what I would say is each of us is probably doing something on our own, but if we can figure out how to more collectively take action, we could do some things at scale. And that's what I would think about. How do you actually have a scale play when it comes to equal opportunity or employability training or things like that?
Thank you. And we've, as you well know, we've been on effort to diversify our membership, which is hard, as you also know, because of our criteria and so forth. But we've made look, Deb is our chair. We love her. And who would have thought if you went back 20 years and looked at our board of directors but we are involved in trying to mentor. We're supporting mentor programs. We have a committee that we're trying to encourage all real estate companies to expand their kind of discretionary investment budget and make sure that some of that, whether it's, if you're going to hire consultants, well, put some of that towards people that you might not otherwise think about it along that line. And Jeff Blau is leading that for us. And it's a big effort. And we're serious about it.
I think that's really important work, Jeff. There's one you could do also. Every single member of the Real Estate Roundtable take an SEO intern. Take an SEO intern. That's something every one of us can do. And it will, because all of us learned from each other. Real estate is somewhat of an apprentice business, if you thought about it. And we've all learned from the previous generations and from each other. So that's another thing you can do.
Thank you.
Penny, we are committed because we know that we will be a more successful organization and a more excellent organization the more we can evolve in diversity and inclusion and support inclusive economic growth. There's no question about it. And so we are committed to making progress as you've identified.
Look, all of us, I'm the first one to admit, if look, we're a work in progress too in our organizations, but if we all do our part, we'll make a difference.
Well, I've always admired you for many reasons, Penny, not the least of which is your incredible work ethic, but also the fact you really did not need to go into public service and represent our country. And yes, while it was a great honor, it was, a sacrifice for you and your family as well. And we are so proud of you, and we are so appreciative of everything that you have done. And I will close it out by just saying thank you again, and we'll welcome you back anytime.
Well, Debra and Jeff, I just want to say, first of all, thanks for having me. But to be honest, I don't know that I would have been Secretary of Commerce without the support of the Real Estate Roundtable. Jeff and Chip and the team really went to bat for me and helped me on Capitol Hill and helped me meet people that I might not have otherwise known in Congress. And I will be forever grateful for that. So thank you all very much. I so appreciate your having me here. And again, it's great to see so many friends and to see all the good work you guys are doing.
Thank you. Be well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.